Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of UIC Liberty TV. I am your host, Chase Neal, Vice President for Middlesex County and UIC Shadow Minister for Education and Human Development. Our topic this evening is kids killing kids. But before we go into our discussion, I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists. Right now, we have with us UIC Director and Recording Secretary Janet Chokanowski, and we are to be joined later by a teacher, Mr. David Henry. I look forward to seeing Mr. Henry joining us. Um, I'd like, well, until we have Mr. Henry joining us, I'd like to big up everybody who's watching us on YouTube, everybody who has signed on to the live. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our show. All right, Director Chokanowski, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, great.
VP Jasmine is also here.
All right, welcome, guys. All right, so we will proceed until our other guest comes up. What I'm going to ask is for the benefit of those persons who might not know us all, for us to give a brief introduction of ourselves, about 1 minute and 30 seconds, so that we know our experiences and where we're coming from as it regards the topic kids killing kids. All right, so Director Chokanowski, I'll give you first go.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction, Mr. Neal. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Janet Chokanowski, and I've been with the UIC since 2017, 2018. And I am grateful to be here. I've learned a lot about good governance and what it is to have a country that's run very well. My background is in education because I've taught early childhood education for a good 20 years. So this is a topic that is very dear to my heart as far as education and children. So I'm glad to be here on the panel to have this discussion as well.
All right, great. All right, so I'll go with a brief introduction of myself. I am Chase. I have been a teacher for around 12 years. I spent 2 of those years in the primary field and 10 years teaching high school students. Since 2018, I've been teaching online, teaching students mainly from Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, um, and how to speak English. So it's really teaching English as a second language. So I've not been in the formal school system since 2018, but still, this topic of kids killing kids, youth on youth violence, student on student violence, is one with which I would have been familiar during my time in the school system. But in lieu of our other guests not being here, um, we will look at what is really going on from our point of view. Petrokanowski, when you see these videos of students fighting each other, stabbing up each other, what is it that comes to your mind? What do you think is happening? What is going on?
Okay, that's a very good question. What I see happening is children have some anger issues and they have not been taught and trained conflict resolution strategies. And so when they have an issue, rather than, being able to sit down with a counselor or with a teacher and talk about it, they take out their frustrations on one another. And so that is an area that I think it needs some work. Something needs to be done because too many children are losing their lives or getting hurt physically unnecessarily. So we have to find a way to bridge the gap and to have strategies in place that will help them deal with these issues that they're experiencing. Sometimes children don't know how to express themselves, so they take it out with, physical harm. So that's definitely an area to look into how we can correct that.
I have to agree with what you said about conflict resolution and the lack of those skills. We see where just a few weeks ago was this all-out brawl between schools, students from different schools fighting each other, and what is reported is that it all started over an argument about a female student from a prominent high school, where one male saw it as if another person was violating his space or violating his girl, and they started a fight, not using positive conflict resolution skills, and then their classmates got involved. Then the people got involved, and then relatives from other schools got involved till it took over the corporate area and went over to St. Catherine. And we see really without our students learning how to resolve their conflicts positively, it turns over into something else. All right, now what I would like to do is share this clip from a psychologist in Trinidad and Tobago, which actually shares a lot of similarities with Jamaica. Let me see if I can get my screen shared and get everybody seeing this. So long. All right, so so this is re causes and solutions for school violence. All right, so I'm going to close this camera and open another one. All right. Or can we see this? Or can we see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, great. Can you see the screen? Oh, let me turn the volume up. Oh, my volume is down. I have clinical therapist and clinical traumatologist. All right, let's go. It's now 17 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. I'm Kimberly D'Souza, and this is the Now Morning Show. Now, there has been a spate of incidents of school violence since school reopened for all levels last week, beginning on Tuesday, April 19th. Now, many are calling for the Ministry of Education to intervene, and the minister has assured that an interministerial committee will take place to deal with the issue. But we wanted to go a bit deeper to determine what can cause children to act out this way. So with me, I have clinical therapist and clinical traumatologist, Mr. Hannah E. Benjamin, who will be discussing this very topic. Mr. Benjamin, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Now.
It's a pleasure, Kimberly, to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
We really had to bring you in. I mean, from since school opened last week on Tuesday, according to the ministry, at least 15 schools have been affected by this school violence. But people have been saying there has been an increase. Maybe we are seeing something new. Is this a new phenomenon?
It is not. It is not. It is not. And I'm quite confused as to why we are confused as to what's going on. Because this is not the first time that we are speaking about school violence in any real sense. I mean, I went to a school where violence was the order of the day, and while I'm 25 years for life, it would have been some time ago. And so I saw brutal fight, including death. And so to hear about, people are concerned, what my concern is really is what did the pandemic do in relation to what we are seeing today. And so we must pay attention. And to me, we never seem to be asking the correct questions. And the very first question, Kimberly, is why? Why are we seeing what we're seeing? We cannot, Kimberly, have a society that is so violent, but yet want our children to be non-violent. We cannot have a country where seemingly there are no real role models to follow, but we want our children to walk on a narrow line.
Now, Mr. Benjamin, before you continue, I know that you want to bring up the pandemic and, of course, the causes, but people are saying it's not just what it may be seen as an increase, but they're talking about the violent behavior towards authority. Because you have been hearing about, children, picking up chairs and, launching it at teachers and that sort of thing. And so they're wondering, like, this level of disrespect was not around when they were in school. So is that a new thing?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I was in a school where the principal was on the stage and student decided to pelt ice at her and she was bleeding. I was in a school where a teacher was busting his head open from a parent and a child with a chair. School violence has been around. The violence has been there. But you are quite right. The intensity is frightening. And that is what I'm saying. We're not asking the correct questions. And we must ask the question, why is the intensity what it is? But when you do a scan of our society, look at the crimes, look at the way, there's no more night time. We used to be afraid of night, but now broad daylight in the middle of the day, without mask, you are being killed. Look at what is going on in our society. We cannot fix our schools unless and until we fix our society. And when I say our society, I mean our homes, our churches, our businesses. Cannot. So if we want to really tackle violence in school, we must attention the violence in society. And until we do that, we're spinning top like we have been doing for many years. And while I applaud the interministerial approach, and I think it is great, however, they are going to say the same thing that they were saying for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Because if we are not looking at one, we will never address the other. And further, if we don't look at the last 2 years in the mix, then we will continue to spend.
Now, when you talk about the last 2 years, are you talking about the fact that they have been maybe out of school and cooped up? I mean, are we also talking about the exposure to online now? Because it went into overdrive these past few years. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of, cyberbullying and what they would have been exposed to, how is that, exposed there?
Thank you, Kimberly, for starting there. Violence was there before the pandemic. Then we had the pandemic where children were, as you said, cooped up. Nobody took into account their coping mechanism. Schools are a safe place for children. So even if I get abused in the night or whatever, I used to run away in the day and leave for a couple hours and be safe enough. But when a child had to be in there, no fault of their own or anybody, they were exposed to domestic violence, to hunger, to all manner of societal ills. And they had to treat with that. And then we never took into account that they were suffering as well, including the ability to do online work. I am seeing students who never engage with mental health treatment now engage with mental health treatment and on medication, right? And so when you have all of that combined with online bullying, so we had online bullying before, but when everybody went online, it exacerbated. And therefore, this was just in waiting till I see you in real life. And you notice in the first week or two, what we have, this is all beef. This is all beef that was brewing online for 2 years. Nobody addressed. No one addressed. And one of the things that is really perplexing to me is because I've been saying before we bring our students out, we must prepare our teachers differently. We must prepare our students differently. We must prepare our parents differently. We can't just bring them out. While I have been advocating, let's get them out. We had to do it from a psychosocial, mental health, behavioral development perspective, because behavior would have changed over the last 2 years. And now we expect them to just jump back in and say, hey, we continue as normal.
But Mr. Benjamin, the ministry can make the argument that they have school social workers on board and they have them in school to help them with that transition.
And I would say, while that is a fact, what is also a fact is that student support services has been understaffed for the last, probably since its inception. And one of my recommendations has always been, with the amount of social workers out there, as you know, I'm the president of the Trans-American Social Workers Association as well. There are social workers that is churned out from all the universities. Every school should have a social worker. a psychologist, or probably a psychologist for 2 schools, and a guidance counselor. Every single school. And if we don't do that, then we don't care about children. Because the issues that I have seen, you see a child today, and the next time you could reasonably see that child is 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks down the line. That is inadequate in any measure. And therefore, while they can argue, yes, you have social workers, my thing is, if you care about children, if you care about their well-being, put a social worker in every single school and let them work. I have said also, Kimberly, that in these 2 months, even before they came out, the focus should not be on any academia. The focus should be on psychosocial development, mental development, to re-engage students into the new way of school, to re-engage students, because you understand the way the child brains operate. They in 2 years would have find a new way. That is how their brain is malleable. And so now they would have already been set. And now to come back out, we have to recalibrate that. And we have not been doing that in any real sense. Yes, the ministry have had a program here, but I am speaking about a sustained everyday program with your social workers. Social workers should be busy up and down that school every day, having sessions all day. But we're not having that because we don't have the manpower to do it. And we're hearing that. And while they say they don't have the manpower, we have social workers working KFC, working taxi, working secretarial duties. And I'm not saying nothing wrong with that. But let us put our children first in the real sense. Not just by saying we have but in a real way. And once we begin to do these things, you will see that the very thing that we are struggling with will be reduced.
Mr. Benjamin, you were talking about, the mental health issue and recalibrating what they would have learned over 2 years. Now, one of the responses to that, at least from the ministry's angle, is the community policing or the community police that they want to put in these schools. Now, what the minister was saying is that there have been repeat offenders in certain schools. And so they want to put the community police in those schools as a way to deter the violence before it even begins. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
I have a different view. Again, community police is critical and they should have a part to play in our school. But how the part is being played is critical. I do not think that we should be in any school or segregating or pulling out any school in terms of every single school has issues. Every single school. When a school has issues of violence or suicidality, because you see, crisis is both implosive and explosive. So while we pay attention to the explosion, which is what we see, the violence, the fighting, we have students who are dealing with severe depression and anxiety, suffering inside. And so we have to be holistic in our approach, and community policing must be part of that multi-systemic approach. And so until we understand that, then the community police, they will go and get frustrated because they're going to be working by themselves, and police, they don't have the wherewithal to deal with the mental health. And so when they see something wrong and they call on the social worker, oh, well, let me see when I could fit a team. And if you have one social worker to 7 schools, almost 3,000 students to one social worker, when and how? And so the poor police and them will get frustrated too. And so what I think should be happening here is to look at a multi-systemic approach, and you get teams within the system, and that team work together. You have a social worker, more likely than not, who could be a case manager, and you manage a system where you have all the key players with different roles and responsibilities, because you're tapping into the disciplinary part, because I don't want people to feel like we're not going to deal with the disciplinary part. We're tackling into the psychosocial part, we're tackling into the educational part, the psychological part, parent development part. Because a lot of parents also, while we think that they should be the first line, I don't believe in that, Harold Abbo's taught us that in sociology. Because a child spends 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 1,000 hours a year with somebody else than a mother or father. So mother and father cannot, in my view, be any primary source of anything. We have to be the primary source for our children's development.
What is the mean the institution as the school?
The school, the home, the church, and the mosque, everybody, because the child is part of an ecological model. And the ecological model surrounds this child. And so the child takes their cues from everybody. You believe the first thing you wanted to be when you were growing up is something that you learned from that school system. The first person you wanted to emulate was a teacher or somebody, and emulate either good or bad. The way you learn and experience life was based on whether you had a teacher who encouraged you or discouraged you. That is the fundamental aspect. And so in my view, while community policing is good, community police cannot work alone. Community police cannot work, psychologists cannot work alone, social workers cannot work alone.
But what about the family? Because some people say charity begins at home. And so when they're seeing these indiscipline in the children, they're wondering what is going on in that home setting.
And there's a responsibility for home. But even if charity begins at home and you have nothing to give, then you're still without. And so we have to strengthen the family in order to help the child. We keep believing that a family knows, a mother knows, a father knows what to do. And why that is their responsibility in law, sometimes we have to teach them. It's the same point I make for sexual education. And people always want to fight me on that. You know, to me, if a parent has lived a difficult sexual life, can they teach a child that? And if we say that they was responsible, then what exactly are we teaching the child? If the family is violent, then what are we doing? And that is why I'm talking about a multi-pronged approach. And this is when the or when you said the ministerial approach
Ministerial.
is also critical. Yeah. Because then once you get a child, rather than have to wait so long to go through social development, to go through family services, if you have everybody combined, then it is of children or family and don't get them the help.
Now, Mr. Benjamin, I want to get your thoughts quickly on the filming and sharing of these group fights. Because a lot of people say by doing that, you're perpetrating the action, you're almost giving it validity, and you're encouraging more school fights to happen. Is that true?
We cannot get away from that. We have to understand we are operating in a technologically advanced world, and our children are more advanced. In our days, what we had was 100 students surrounding the fight. That was the social media at that point. And that would have given legs in terms of they would talk about it every day. And so the fight continued to live for a couple of days because they had to chain up people with basketball. But today now, that has moved to like everything else. And in managing that circumstances back then, we also have to manage what is now. We cannot get away from that. And so we focus on the wrong thing. Again, that is the end result. Let us focus on the why at the beginning. And once we do that, then we will see that those other things will change. But again, we only concentrate on the social media because we see that. What about how many fights are happening today that we do not see? And until we understand the holistic approach, including social media, we spin it up.
I wanted to know as well the effect that or how domestic violence played out or violence played out locally has been affecting what we're seeing in schools.
No, domestic violence again has been a part of, unfortunately, family for a very long time and has been affecting students also. And the interesting point you raised here, and you raised it in your previous interview, and I do not have the data support, but anecdotally, and a person who works with family every day, you saw where violence in the home, not just domestic violence, but violence in general, created an even greater challenge for children. I saw a lot of parent-child difficult relationships. I saw a lot of crumbling marriages because I call the pandemic the great revealer. It reveals so many things for so many of us, including fractures, right? You remember, not just children wanted to go to school, but wives wanted to go to work, husband wanted to not be home because being home would have been traumatic and problematic. And so what that did, it exacerbated the violence. And that continues. You see what we see now? Is frustration. And when we rush in there to put that in boot camp, to bring the police and then be creating even more frustration. Pause, Trinidad and Tobago. Let us talk to them children them.
That was going to be my next question. I'm feeling like no one is talking to the children to find out what's going on.
Kimberly, you are so right. It pains me. That's why I'm saying we're supposed to be using the child system in our schools right now. We're supposed to be having the restorative circles, using mindfulness and meditation. We need to be listening to children, not rushing in to do 1-on-1 is 2 and 5 and 5 is 6. Children have gone to preschool and have never seen a school or students. This 2 months should be used to really help and talk and listen. Them children went through real stress at home for the last 2 years on so many levels, and nobody's listening to their cries. But we are reacting to what we see as opposed to listening to what is going on. And once we begin to listen to them, not from a punitive perspective, but a loving, developmental perspective, we will recognize that them children will boil down. But right now they're lashing out because they're frustrated. They don't know where to go, who to turn to. And everybody's squid. It's exam, school. And we're not paying attention to the real questions. Let us ask the correct questions. And I'm saying, once we begin to do these things, this fighting will be a thing of the past. Fighting is a reaction to something. What is this something that we are reacting to?
Mr. Benjamin, you would have seen, I spoke to Inspector Lewis before and I asked her if a police officer can, arrest a child. And she said yes. And I think she gave the age group of 7 where, they can be arrested and stuff. But there's something called the judge's rule. How does that factor into, these new community police we're going to be seeing in the schools and, possibly arresting children?
No, police has always been part of the school system. And I made a statement on Facebook, and that was exactly, I said, I pray that they are following the judge's rule, because we have to protect our children. And so just quickly, you can't arrest a child in a school and put that child in handcuffs. You cannot come in a school in form and put a child in a marked vehicle. Those are things that people need to understand. And if you don't understand it, Google the judge's rules. It talks about the rules of engagement with children and young people in schools. And I believe that while the police and all of these other agencies are getting involved, we have to operate understanding that children too have rights. And we must protect their rights. It is not just fancy to sign as a signatory to the Convention for the Rights of the Child, but it is also to practice that. And if we begin to practice that, the judge's rule and all these other things, we will move children and families further along. And so it is critical for us as we wrap our head around what a lot of people seem to be excited about. We do it in a way that protects the rights of a child, but also develop that child and develop their families.
One of the arguments as well, Mr. Benjamin, is the fact that, children, the music that they're listening to and the things that they're exposed to, be a cause for what we're seeing now. That's like an argument with all psychologists. How true or wrong is that?
From my perspective and from research, that is a myth. Right? Because the amount of people who listen to all kinds of music, we will have tyranny and chaos in the world. Right? People talk about video games and things. While I understand that there might be 1 or 2 outliers, statistically, if children will listen to this music in the majority, would react or respond to a video game or to music, what kind of country will be, what kind of world will be living in? I don't know if to look to that statement at all.
Mr. Benjamin, let me thank you so much for coming. I mean, any final thoughts before we close?
Listen to the children. Listen to the voice of the children. That is critical. And until we do that, we'll be spinning. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Benjamin. Of course, happy birthday, Mommy, from all of us in the Now Morning Show. That was Mr. Hannes E.A. Benjamin, who is a clinical therapist and a clinical traumatologist, just unpacking what we've been seeing these last few days with the violence in our schools.
All right, so we have seen the clip. I like to.
When someone listens to you and makes you feel special,
Hold on.
how could you
This thing is
suspect
still
that they have
playing.
something else in mind?
All right, I'd like to highlight some of the important points. Let me get myself back up. All right, is everyone seeing me? All right, how am I now?
Yes, you're good.
All right, hold on. All right, so I'm going to ask Director Chukanowski to give your thoughts of what was presented.
Wow, that was heavy duty. In fact, that's the same situation that is going on in that country, same situation going on in Jamaica and many other parts of the world. So I think I agree with the gentleman that during the pandemic, there were certain things that should have been in place to help the students. There needs to be a connection. There is a disconnect somewhere, and there needs to be a connection between students, teachers, and the parents. And so what he was discussing as far as what was going on in his country is the same similar issues that are going on in our country, Jamaica, as well. And so we have to find the solutions and find out what we actually need to do. And I think the main key is to set up peer groups to speak with children, find out what they're thinking, what is bothering them. Of course, they may not trust you right away, but they have to develop trust with us so that they can open up and tell us, what their thought processes are.
Great. Did Mr. Henry join us?
Yes, he's here, I think. Yes.
All right, so we'll break to welcome you, Sir Henry. Welcome to the show. Could you?
Yeah, good evening and thanks.
Okay, great. Can you open the camera, Sir Henry?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. All right. Oh, I think I open and close. Yeah.
There you are.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, good night. The discussion sound like it has already concluded. That was a very good piece coming out of Trinidad, I think. Um, Maybe what we need to focus on now, I think, is a kind of solution. What can we do to decrease the number of children violence in our schools, which may result in children killing children? And I think maybe that's where we need to go, because there are so many things that are coming against children in terms of so many different factors, so many things that they have to deal with that they are really and truly not prepared to deal with. So how can we as adults make their world a better place for them, and so make our world a better place for us in the future? Because guess what? Let's remember that one day these are the children who is gonna come and take care of us. Yeah, they will be our nurses, they'll be our doctors, they will be everything. So how can we empower them to be better adults? I think maybe that's where we need to look. I don't know.
but could you repeat that, please, Mr. Henry?
No, I'm saying I think maybe we need to focus a little more on solution. How can we make our children better adults for the future?
All right.
In
So,
Of course, in dealing in what they are facing now.
all right. So I'll be picking your brains later on regarding possible solutions. But before we do that, I'd like to highlight some things that were said in the video clip that we just looked at.
Right,
A while ago, not a while ago, the gentleman said fighting is a reaction to something. I think that's a profound statement. Fighting is a reaction to something. What is the something that these students are reacting to? And he said earlier in his presentation that we should focus on addressing the why, the beginning. And once we focus on addressing the beginning, the why, everything else will be addressed as well. So, um, if we focus instead of on a knee-jerk reaction, we see the fighting and want to stop without looking at the reasons why fighting is going on, why the killing is going on, then we won't have the solution. The pandemic was pointed to as one of the reasons for the exacerbation of the fighting. Fighting and killing has been going on like forever, but since the pandemic and our students being cooped up and facing a lot of abuse at home and being um, already a recruiting ground for gangsters and so forth, with the increased online means, we have children who are traumatized, and so that, according to the psychologists, is a significant factor to why we have the increase in fights and violence. Also, we have not, well, we was talking about Trinidad, but as Director Chakanowski said, we share a lot of things in common with Trinidad. We
Oh
see
yeah.
where not a lot of resources are in our schools and in the education system. Just as in Trinidad, we don't have enough teachers in the schools, and teachers are not trained to deal with these psychological issues that the children are facing. Our schools don't have social workers assigned to them nor psychologists, which would be integral. So, what is it that we can do? What is the solution? As was pointed out in the clip, the police isn't the answer. I know there was some initiative some years ago. Well, it wasn't enacted or effected, but the government was considering giving teachers police powers. I don't know how many persons had heard of that, and there was this thought to attach police permanently to schools. Now, as we stand with it, that is not something that is a sustainable response or an effective one, because police alone can't do it. Psychologists alone can't do it. Parents alone can't do it. We need a holistic way of doing things. All right. So before we move to the next clip, do we have any, based on our experience in education and what we have seen in society so far, the children just, they're angry. How would we recommend that we fix this as a nation? Berka Chakanowski, I give you the floor first. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, we have to look at the curriculum of the school. I was looking at an article. It was actually a study that was done, and this study was
Yeah.
actually conducted in 2022 or 2020
Huh?
rather. We need to
Oh,
mute
sorry.
Mr. Need to mute
You-
Mr. David. But this study was conducted in 2020, and
Mhm.
basically, the issue starts with the curriculum. If the curriculum does not have information that the students can relate to their everyday life, that's preparing them to become independent thinkers and to become independent learners in society, then we're setting them up for failure because they cannot relate to the curriculum if it's not showing them their history, their past, and showing them their current, and then their future. They cannot relate to so now they're turned off from school because the subject matter is not really relating to what's happening in their lives. And so how can we correct that if we're not getting the correct information? Because actually, this study was done just throughout the Caribbean, by the way, and they were trying to set up a national standard curriculum. And Jamaica has been involved in this ongoing curriculum progress since we became independent, and we still have not arrived at any concrete conclusion that is really being implemented into the schools, right? So what can we do then? If we're not getting the help from the Ministry of Education that we're supposed to be getting, what can schools do to help the situation? And I think what can be done is teachers, when they begin the school year, they can have conversations with their students, get to understand who their students are, their background, what they're coming from, what they're faced with each day. Now, the students may not necessarily open up right away. They have to win the trust of their classroom teacher. And as they're winning the trust of the classroom teacher, now they will begin to open up. It could start out where they could anonymously write, their concerns on paper, and then they have a discussion in the classroom. I really believe if that kind of approach is set in place, maybe every morning, maybe 10 minutes before they start their academic lessons, they can go around the room. And I know the classrooms are overcrowded. That was also one of the problems. The classrooms are overcrowded. The teacher does not have an assistant. So it is very difficult when you have unruly children to really set the pace in the classroom. So it takes a very strong person to be a teacher these days because of the elements that they have to deal with on a daily basis, with all the multiple personalities coming to the classroom. So something as a teacher had to try to set up something in their individual classrooms to help them get through the day.
I love that, Director Chokanowski, because if we heard what the psychologist said, it is integral to listen to the children. And if the children find that there isn't anyone that they can turn to, then they act out their emotions in negative ways. So if we are able to encourage our teachers to do this, as you said, uh, get the children to talk and provide a means by which they can express themselves and they feel listened to, then that can bring about a real change. I also like that suggestion about reconfiguring our curriculum, especially as it relates to getting our students to think critically and to prepare them for life. Because if it is that they cannot connect to the curriculum and they don't see how it relates to them, then they are unable to use the education or the so-called education that they're given to solve their own problems and to look forward to a positive role in adulthood. This will be mentioned in the next clip, but connection is an important thing when it comes to crime and violence. If young people don't feel connected to the community, then they will find ways to get noticed. If they're not getting the attention from the community or feeling a part of it, then they will find ways which are not always constructive to be noticed and form their own links. All right, Sir Henry, are you back with us? Mr. Henry, not here yet. Is there anyone? I'll just take one for now. In the platform with us on the Zoom, who wants to comment on any possible solutions to the violence and the killing among youth before we move to the next clip?
I'm also wondering, VP Chase, if there is a way. Well, we understand that many of the communities in Jamaica do not have community centers, but the very school can be used as a community center where simple programs can be set up to attract the children. For example, kids who are interested in gardening, children who may be interested in learning to sew, boys who may be interested in computer science, or they're interested in gardening, they want to become a farmer. If something could be implemented in the schools to get the kids involved, so they take ownership and they can become proud of something that they're a part of. So even though we may not have the support from the Ministry of Education with all the millions of dollars that they're spending, I don't know what the heck they're doing with it. These schools can help the parents, get the parents involved and get everybody involved. And I know it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do, but we can start one of the steps and have a pilot program where the school says, let's stay an extra hour after school and have a few programs in place to get the kids involved and get them interested in doing something. That's a start to help them, channel them, and let them take that energy that they have and put it in the right direction.
All right, great. And that feeds into, again, connection, getting them involved, being a part of the community so that they channel their energies into positive means. All right, so far we have looked at the cause of violence amongst students, because if we're looking at the topic of the video, it was really based on the schools. But we have a problem with youth killing youth even outside of schools. This happens within the communities. So the next clip, the real roots of youth violence, will look at what influences this outside of the school setting. So we established that in the school setting, youths or students don't feel like they're being listened to. They don't have it at home. And in the school, the teachers aren't equipped to do that. They spend most of their time at school, and the teachers aren't equipped to cater to it. So, but as it relates to what is going on in the community, what is the cause of that apart from school settings? So we'll be looking at another video, and and seeing what is being offered to us here. All right, let me turn off this and turn on the other one.
Hearing.
Come to the hospital now. Someone just.
All right, sorry about that. I didn't realize I was muted.
My line of work is an urban youth specialist. This is an image that I see quite often. Young people from our communities stabbed, shot, beaten, wounded. And how I arrive at this particular point, it starts at 2:26 or 4:21 in the morning when I'm sleeping in bed. I'm next to my wife. My child is sleeping the other direction with his or her toes in my nose. And I get a phone call, generally off a private number. And the phone call normally sounds like this. Yo, Craig! Come to the hospital now. Someone just got shot. Or, excuse me, is this Craig Pinckney? I'm the mother of Sean. I know you don't know me, but is it possible if you could just make your way to us? Because there's an incident that just literally took place a couple of hours ago. My son's in theatre, and all of his friends are saying that you need to come to the hospital. I know we have. Is it possible you could just quickly make your way now? And as I do, get out of my bed, my family, car, and make my way to the hospital. And even though I'm passionate about this type of work, there's something that really frustrates me. I'm going to share. Now, anytime I go to different places around the city, around the UK, around Europe, I always get faced with this statement. It's not my problem. I generally talk to just general people about raising awareness of youth violence and gun crime and knife crime. And people say, yeah, but it's not really me, it's those types of young people or it's them. And in the back of my head, I'm getting a little bit angry, but frustration, but smiling at the same time. And I'm saying, yeah, but it is our problem. Till it happens to your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your husband, your wife, your partner, your neighbor, your colleague. And the image that is before you are young people from inner city Birmingham under the age of 21 in the last 3 years that have lost their lives to violence. I could show you another 2 slides of young people in the last 3 years that have lost their lives to knives, to guns. Wrong place, wrong time at a party, having fun. Something happens. Sitting on a school bus, something happens. and they lose their life. But why I showed you this image is these young people were not criminals. These young people were not gang members. Because I know when the media talk about violence, you always think, oh, it's just gang related. But that wasn't the case. And as a criminologist, part of my work is about trying to understand what causes young people to be violent, asking that most important question, why? Why would a young person that is 16, 15, 17 years old want to pick up a knife and just stab someone at random and then let them? Why would someone want to pick up a gun just because someone lives in a completely different postcode and be prepared to shoot it? Why would someone be prepared to kill a child on a school bus just because they're looking at them for 10 seconds? And the fact of the matter is, there's not one answer to answer why young people arrive at a particular point. There's actually a series of factors: dysfunctional families, father absence, racism, poor identities, dysfunctional homes. But one thing that really sticks out to me when I'm analysing this type of thing is this one word about invisibility. Invisible. What I find in my work is that most young people in our society are invisible, unseen, unheard. If anybody knows the history of cultures and communities, that when people feel oppressed, when people feel invisible, when people feel unheard, sometimes they do things in order to be visible. So we might not be able to understand why a young person gets on the bus one day and feels that in order to get credibility, I need to hurt somebody, I need to rob somebody's phone. Our young people are invisible. I'm sure you've heard the saying before. It takes a village to raise a child. We always talk about the village. But I'd like to extend on that by saying, yes, it takes a village to raise a child. But when you don't recognize the village, sometimes that village can kill a child. And there's also another saying in that same school of thought that if young people don't feel a part of that village, they will burn it down to feel it. I'll say it one more time. If young people feel they are not part of our village, they will burn it down to feel it. So, there's probably people in the room now probably thinking, well, you just kind of shocked me with certain things, and yes, it could be my son, it could be my daughter, it could be a relative of mine, but what can I do? I'm just going to spend a couple of seconds speaking to that individual in the room that is thinking, well, how can I become like you? How can I do this type of work? I'm just going to put out 4 things. Number 1, find out what's going on in your community. Find out what the issue is in your community amongst young people. Individuals that involve themselves in certain types of behaviours. Number 2, find out who those people are, the workers, the frontline workers that are doing the real work in that community. Number 3, attach yourself to them. Make contact, inquire, find out, YouTube, social media, find different ways that you can engage with those people. Number 4, create your own platform. And then call young people, call people from the community of all different ages. They can support you in building your own legacy. No different to the way that I'm calling you all right now.
Looking to launch your online store? Rocket helps you build your dropshipping store in just 5 minutes with AI.
Because I did it. I was like many of you in the room right now, sitting in a conference, sitting on a course. And 2 individuals that I met, number 1, Dr. Carlton Housen, spoke quite profoundly about issues that pertain to society. And I was taken aback by that man, and I wanted to meet him and find out a little bit more about him. And when I met him, he started to challenge my mind, he started to challenge my ideas about what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a black man in Western society, and to understand some of the issues that take place with young people. So when they get labeled as being criminals, being thugs, being hoodies, and being gang members, I understand it that when I walk into work Monday to Friday and I get into the lift with my badge on and say, are you a security guard? Are you a cleaner? Do you teach sport? Are you a musician? I've got a staff badge on like everybody else. Shouldn't the question be, what do you teach? Rather than the assumption. So then I met another man, Dr. Martin Glynn, where he was on a course and he it was quite interesting because he said something also quite profound that really shocked me in the way that I thought and the way that I looked at things around this issue of youth and gang violence. And on a break time, everybody didn't want to talk to him. And I walked over to him and said, "You don't know me, but my name is Craig Pinckney and you need to be my mentor." So I exchanged numbers. I was talking to him every single day. I said, we need to meet. And he kind of got fed up. So he said, "You know what, just come around to my house." I used to have to go to work at 9 o'clock every single morning. I would be at Dr. Martin Glyn's house, 7:30, my notepad and pen, asking questions, learning concepts, understanding this individual's mind, because I wanted to take that information and not just store it as a walking book, but be able to implement that into my community. And anybody can possess that. It didn't require money. It didn't require a qualification. All it required was dedication, time, and reflection. Some of you may have seen this bird before, known as the Sankofa bird. And the concept of Sankofa comes from the Akan people of West Africa. And the concept of Sankofa literally means we have to go back to reclaim our history in order for us to move forward. So how does that apply to the issues of what I'm talking about today? Sometimes we as members of society, we only respond to the symptoms, but we don't ever look at the root causes of what causes individuals to become what they are. So sometimes we need to go back to history to find out, well, what is the root? What are the key things in society that is causing things or causing people to behave a range of different ways? But also that can mean that looking within self, looking within what causes you to do the things that you do. How do you ignite that fire? And when that fire burns out, how do you reignite it again? Because that's what I did. And if I can do it, you can do it. Each one, teach one, the power of us. Thank you.
All right. I'm seeing on YouTube where this stream is suspended.
Yes, I saw that and I was trying to get Nikki's attention. I don't know if she stepped away. Yep, it's not on YouTube.
I'm wondering if this is a case where it's the video that's not being shown and audio is being played, or it's totally suspended.
That I'm not sure what's going on. That's strange. Oh, she says it might be a copyright violation. Okay.
But for playing the videos, this has never been a problem before. I'm wondering if it even makes sense to continue with the show since the stream is suspended.
Right, Naika? Should we end the discussion then, since we can't do it live on the it won't show on the YouTube anymore? Because I think once YouTube ends, you can't really just pick it up and start again. Oops, Naika is gone.
Oh, Naika is gone too.
Oh,
Whoa.
wow. Okay. Yes. Let's see if she's writing in the chat. On the YouTube. I mean, not YouTube, but wow. That's strange.
And we were just about to get to
The meat of his info, yes.
Yes,
Oh, my goodness.
we're just going to get into the meat of it.
Like how the guest is still here, should we not say something and just
All right, so I guess we can just summarize.